Welcome back to this week's episode of Green Enterprise, a partnership between my company, Digital Venture Partners, and Black Enterprise, where every week I bring you a host or an executive that I feel great about in the space that I feel like is making progress within cannabis or CBD the right way for people of color. This week we have Hassim Robinson, who's the owner of Winter Circles Genetics, a multifaceted cannabis company that focuses on pretty much every sector of cannabis. He's super effective in his marketing prowess and how he communicates his brand. So I'm really excited to have you on today, my brother.
Pleasure having me on. Thank you, Andrew, for inviting me on the show, man.
Man, no problem, bro. I definitely look up to you guys as your company, your business model, and just your expertise in cannabis. I would love to get an idea around just your professional background and kind of what led you into cannabis as a professional.
Sure, no problem. I actually was an athlete. I started as an athlete. I had a baseball scholarship, and then I graduated and I had a degree in business management. The cannabis field always caught my eye because number one, I felt like, of course, the upside of the money, but also felt like, our community wasn't really represented in that field the way I felt we should be.
Okay, so what state and like particular area did you kind of learn about cannabis and become expert in the field?
I'm from California. I've been born and raised in Berkeley, California. So I learned all of my knowledge back home in California. And it's just a very vibrant cannabis culture in California. I believe we're the four founders in the start of the culture. So I learned everything I learned in California about.
What kind of goes in? Well, first, if you could give us a kind of an overview of your company, Winter Circles Genetics, because you are the first Black person that I met that focused specifically, well, not specifically, but a great deal of your business model on genetics, right? And intellectual property and breeding new things that aren't on the market and people really haven't consumed yet. So kind of what's that business model like, and kind of what's the defining keys of success if you are in genetics, and as well as the other parts that you focus on?
Well, we positioned ourselves a little different than a lot of companies. I believe that the genetics are the foundation of having a profitable company, being able to breed genetics in-house, being able to create your own strains. To me, that's what positioned ourselves different from everybody else. In addition to our marketing, my background in business management, in addition to the other businesses I've owned, kind of gave me I'd say a leg up on everybody because I was already familiar with marketing and merchandising and the whole next step of besides just cultivating. So I felt like my business talents from other businesses that I've owned kind of helped me in the cannabis industry.
Okay, what type of businesses were you in before you made that jump into cannabis? That's a conversation that I'm sure that you get asked often, like, how can I get into cannabis? So what was kind of the businesses or that track that led up to you making that leap?
The first business I started was a doggy daycare boarding facility called Glamour Paws. We started in California. I then moved to Atlanta, and my wife and I opened a location here in Atlanta. We were best of Atlanta for about 10 years straight. We sold it. At the same time that I opened the doggy daycare facility in California, I also had a sports bar in downtown Oakland. So I'm a very wide background of businesses, not just
entrepreneur.
Cannabis. Yeah, exactly. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've always been self-employed. I've always tried to look for ways to position myself to be able to take care of myself and my family.
Okay, so jumping into cannabis, like what were some of the avenues or ways that you educated yourself? Because, selling cannabis is one thing, but when you get into the science of, breeding it and growing it and cultivating it, how did you acquire that information?
Just over the years of just, trying different strains and trying different cannabis and seeing, like, I believe everybody's palate is different. So, you might, you like different foods than I like, our palate is different. So I kind of just over the years of trying different things and developing a flavor palette of strains that I liked, and then kind of try to tailor things around what I thought was popular and what the flavor profiles I thought were popular.
I love for myself and for the viewers, if you could kind of give a breakdown in the difference between like genetics versus cultivation, like what are the segments of actually, coming up with finding a great cannabis source or seed, and then, getting it across the finish line through growing?
I mean, it's difficult, man. I mean, you can, people create strains all the time. People drop strains all the time, but you don't know which one's gonna hit. You don't know which ones the consumer's gonna like. You don't know which marketing approach they're gonna like. So it's kind of like a shot in the dark. We use focus groups. We use, all of my companions in the cannabis industry. We'll get together and try different stuff. But it's a very difficult process because when you're starting with genetics, you're starting with the male and female, and you're breeding those two together to get that end result that you want. Cultivation is just taking, your clones or your seed, starting from seed and just growing those out. Whereas breeding and genetics is, finding a male stud plant you like, getting a pollen from that, pollinating the females. So it's a whole different process than just not cultivating. Is not easy. Don't get it wrong, but it's a more developed process than just cultivating.
What's the price point? Like, let's say if you're like, I'm going to breed a new strain, right? What's the general like ballpark cost for that and time frame?
Well, I don't want to just put a number on it. To me, it's more finding a male and female plant that you like, that you even want to breed. For instance, say one of the popular strains on the last couple of years have been gelato. So you find a good gelato strain that you like. Hopefully you can get a male plant and get some pollen out of that. And then you breed it with a female, another strain that you like. So it's hard for me to put an exact number on it. It's more of the finding a needle in a haystack process that makes the breeding and the genetic part hard.
Okay. And moving forward from that, because, I follow your company pretty closely. So you have two strains that I'm aware of that's doing pretty well at retail right now, which is your 1942 strain and your PB&J. Once you settle in on something that you really feel good about presenting to the market, what's that process to get it to the public, to get it in dispensaries, to really advertise the strain?
Right now, currently on the market, we have our original peanut butter and jelly strain, which is going to be our basis for everything we back cross to. The next strain we'll be releasing will either be the peanut butter and guava jelly or the 1942. We've gotten a really great reaction from the 1942. Number one, because of the packaging. And number two, because people are really just following the marketing we've been doing. We've kind of taken a different approach than a lot of companies. I want to give up the secret sauce here on Black Enterprise, but we've definitely taken a different approach. One of my business partners has a really strong background in the music industry. So we've kind of, taken an approach of, branding products with, celebrities, with the music industry, just with the culture, and just maintaining that same line of blending cannabis and culture together.
Right. I agree. I always say that, at a certain point for legal cannabis to survive and grow to what we think it will be, it has to cross over to the mainstream. I think a mistake that a lot of early players in legal cannabis made, they expected, because since they have a license now or they have a dispensary, that cannabis company culture was going to come to them, right? Where it's really like, we have to go to them. We have to exist where they watch television, where they like to shop, where they like to engage. So
yeah, that's a great point.
Right. That's where
I feel like the one thing that people need to realize is that cannabis is big business. This is not your mom and pop black market stuff anymore. These are multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar corporations getting behind these brands that have a marketing push. So although we don't have these marketing dollars, I feel like we are more in touch with the culture and the market than a lot of these other Wall Street companies, because we're really from grassroots. We started, grassroots. We're a small company. No corporate money, no handouts, no loans. It's just us. So I think that we're able to identify with the culture because we're really from the culture. So it makes it a little bit easier for us. We know what people want. And then being the industry that it is, you can really advertise. So that's the difference now, is that you can really market your products. So now it's taken a different form, because it's not just your local, your local guys or your local black market stuff. This is big business now, and people need to realize that.
I think one thing that sets you apart that's really simple, and very few cannabis companies have done it so far, I think you've identified your target demographic. I think a lot of multi-state operators, LPs who came in with a lot of money, they tried to sell cannabis to everybody, right? And they didn't figure out how to effectively sell it to one even segment first to build off of that, right? So like even with your 1942 packaging, I would love for you to kind of show the viewers the
Sure.
packaging, because it looks like a champagne bottle, right? And then
This is actually a 42 bottle. This is the prototype. The actual bottle will be more brown amber color. Um, this bottle holds a half ounce, which is 4 jars. The bottle that we'll be dropping in like cookies and all of our uh, supply chain will be a smaller bottle. It only hold 2 jars. But people really been liking the packaging on it, along with the genetics. So what you do is you got the bottle here, screw the bottle open, out come your jars.
that's dope. What gave you that thought process to package it in a bottle like that?
Well, I kind of looked at it a little different than everybody else. Because of my background in other businesses, I always look at the merchandising. My wife is really good at merchandising. All of our dog boutiques, she used to do all the merchandising. So I kind of looked at it like, well, hey, besides just a Mylar bag or a jar on the shelf, what would be really cool? What would make this a collector's item? What will people, rappers in the studio love to post on their IG? I just took it to the next level of merchandising and marketing. And we've got a great reaction from it. Really great reaction from it.
Yeah, I say that, today there are more types of currency from social media, right? Like shareability is a form of currency because it's going to give you a reach that you can't buy or pay Instagram to give you, right? Like you just said, like prominent people or influential people. I call them like group chat influencers, right? Because we all have group chats with our friends and family. We put what we care about or what's cool to us in that group chat. And because it's intimate and we have relationships with each other in that setting, it makes reaching the group chat more important now because we actually care. Like if me and you are cool, I send you something dope. That's how, vacations get planned. That's how parties get planned or trips or concerts, right? We say, hey, bro, this is dope. What do you think about this? That's how we start to spend our money now, stuff that we are presenting in like our group chats and stuff. So I think when you come up with like a dope packaging where people just have to share that, right? You just got to show your homeboy. You got to DM that to your girl. Like, man, look at this bottle.
And that's what's been happening. It's just been catching legs because we've only done a small little preview on IG just to let people know and get that idea out there because it's trademarked and to let people know, hey, we're changing the game with this. But we haven't really done a big marketing push yet like we're getting ready to. And I totally agree with you. It's caught legs. People love it. It's something they've been sharing. I mean, I've been getting DMs like crazy about it. And it's not even, we've only shown it on Instagram like two, 3 times. So I think we have one here. We're going to fine tune it. We haven't even released the genetics yet. We might get a brand ambassador for this one. We got a couple of celebrities that have been contacting me. So I'll definitely keep you posted.
Oh yeah, bro. I look forward to it. I love to see it. So when someone tells you like, okay, Hassim, I'm thinking about transitioning my skills into cannabis. I want to open a dispensary or I want to get my license. What's that general answer that you give to somebody who seems like, really excited about the idea of getting into cannabis? What advice do you give that person?
That's a great question, man, because I get those questions all the time. And I don't want your viewers to be fooled because there is a ton of money in the cannabis industry, but you have to be positioned correctly. You can't just jump in there thinking you're going to be able to compete with these, Wall Street money. So, to really make money in cannabis, you have to be vertically integrated. And although we're not vertically integrated right now, we're pushing towards that. So I would tell anybody who's interested in getting into cannabis, first do your research. Try to get a mentor. You can DM my IG, Winner Circle. I'll answer any questions anybody wants to ask. But again, you're not going to make a ton of money in the cannabis industry if you're not vertically integrated. So that would be the first thing I would tell people is, hey, if you're thinking you're going to quit your job and retire and make millions in marijuana, it's not going to happen unless you're vertically integrated and you really have a direct approach. Get some experience. Go work for somebody. See if you really like it. If you've never been in the industry before, it's hard work. Everything's not glamorous. Putting these things together, and it's tedious work. It's monotonous. You have to really love the plant. So if it's not something you really love, don't do it just for the money.
People have to figure out how to generate revenue, right? I think a lot of companies came in and just were professional raisers and they just kept raising capital and kept raising debt
100%.
where they weren't able to sustain themselves, right? And that kind of put a bad image of cannabis entrepreneurs out to the public because all of these people who were from, MedMen and Canopy who were on Yahoo Finance and Forbes and stuff 2 years ago, now their companies are bankrupt and they're
all suffering. They're all suffering.
Right.
And I think that's more of them, everybody looks at the upside. but they don't really know the market. Like, you have to have a wide variety of products up and down the price points. You can't just have designer boutique stuff because older people and not everybody can afford it. So you have to have some mid-level products. You have to have some low-end products. So, excuse me, I think that everybody jumped in the market and threw money at it thinking, oh, there's a big light at the end of the tunnel, but they didn't know about the real pricing, what people are really going to pay, the real price points, and the demand for, not everything being boutique, but the middle demand for weed. And I think that a lot of companies misjudge that, and they just threw a bunch of money at it. And they're finding out now that, all these prices and numbers they had in their pro forma aren't the real number.
Yeah.
And that's what's been happening.
Yeah, they, for one, had no experience in the space. They'd never sold to a cannabis consumer before. And I think a couple of them honestly had no intentions of it. That I think a lot of them just came in to try to figure out how to pay themselves in the meantime. And they didn't really care what the outcome of that particular company was. It was just a vehicle for them to pay themselves large salaries and bonuses. But to your point about, tiering your product, two industries that I think figured that out very well were clothing and the automotive industry, right? Because if you look at, Gap, they have their higher end Banana Republic and they have a lower end Old Navy, right? Even with car companies, I think Acura has Toyota and maybe Lexus, right? So it's like you have Lexus high end, Acura mid level, Toyota low level, right? So I think to your point, cannabis is that exact same ideation that you have to have at retail, right? So moving on to like a different sector of retail, what's that process of you getting your SKUs into dispensaries? How do you craft those relationships? How do you partner with like delivery licensees?
Well, to be honest, fortunately for us, we've been really lucky. A lot of the big companies have seen our marketing push, they've seen our packaging, they've seen the quality of our products, and they've kind of sought out after us, which normally doesn't happen in this industry. Being a person of color in this industry is very difficult. As you know, there's not too many of us in the industry. So we were really lucky to be sought after by a lot of the top companies, just because they saw our marketing push. They saw we were different. They saw we weren't copying everybody else. They saw we really had our own infrastructure and genetics. We're not just white labeling products from other people. We're really creating them. So we got lucky and companies sought after us.
And to touch on like your marketing, because, as we both know, being that cannabis is still federally prohibited, is certain traditional marketing tactics that we can't take advantage of. Something as simple as a sponsored Facebook or Instagram post, right? Or a television commercial segment. So, what's you guys' thought process when you say, okay, we want to figure out how to really deliver this to the public in a dope way? What are some of the workarounds that you found?
I mean, it's funny because a lot of our stuff happens organically, like, through our relationships we have with other people in the industry, or just because of, us really being from the culture. We just kind of, the marketing things we come up with, it might just be me and a couple of the guys from the team. And we say, hey man, let's do this. It's not like we have some, secret formula. It's just, we know what people in the culture like because we're really from the culture and we target that.
Okay. And then moving forward, how did COVID affect you guys' business heading into 2020, and kind of what long lasting effects do you think that COVID is going to have on the cannabis industry?
That's a great question, man. It's difficult for me because, as you know, there's a lot of people who are currently in prison for what we're doing right now. So in COVID, for the cannabis industry to be deemed essential service was kind of like a catch-22 for me, because you still have so many, minorities in jail for this. But during COVID, which is a anomaly that we've never really seen before in the world, cannabis was deemed an essential service. So a lot of industries numbers were going down, whereas cannabis was shooting up because people were at home. Delivery services numbers went up times 10. Have a couple delivery service partnerships in Vegas, and people were making orders on Monday. They weren't getting delivered till Thursday. That's how busy delivery services became during COVID. So a lot of industries did not see the upswings that we saw in cannabis. So it's funny to say, well, not funny to say, it's weird to say, but COVID has actually helped the cannabis industry.
Yeah, I agree. It actually pivoted our company into content. Like, we started partnering with companies like Black Enterprise because there was such a desire, especially with COVID being coupled with like the social justice conversations. People now want to hear our perspective, right? They want to see, you know, people coming from where we come from, and you know what's our experiences within cannabis. So it definitely did well for the cannabis culture overall, which, well, for us within cannabis, a lot of larger companies who were struggling, it kind of expedited their downfall, like a MedMen, like an Aurora. So as a retailer, kind of what effect did that have, if any, once you saw kind of all these big companies start to fold? Did that affect you guys' business at all?
It didn't affect us. It just made us go back to the drawing board to say, hey, are we positioned correctly? Is our infrastructure where it needs to be? You know, if we have something else like this, will we be prepared for it? You know, we have to still pay our staff during these times. I mean, bills didn't stop. So it just it gave us a wake up to me in the cannabis industry, because it said, hey, if this happens, are you guys prepared? In addition to, I don't know if you saw all the break-ins during the during COVID at a lot of cannabis clubs. So it actually exposed the security aspect that a lot of these dispensaries and grows needed. So the COVID, you know, it helped the numbers. And to me, it also helped to let companies know, hey, you need to secure your stuff. This is big business.
Right. And then lastly, before I let you go, a conversation that's kind of in the back of everybody's mind in the cannabis space, federal legalization. Do you feel like that's going to be a positive thing for like Black entrepreneurs in cannabis, or do you think we need to better position ourselves to have a seat at the table once that actually happens?
I think you need to start positioning yourself now to have a seat at the table. Another thing I would like to say is, if you don't have the capacity or the capital to get into the THC side, maybe start on the CBD hemp side. You know, it's not as expensive as an alternative. It's legal in all 50 states. So something else that Winter Circle is getting involved in, and I think that your viewers should also look into that as a alternative for THC if they don't have the assets or the liquidity to get into the THC side.
Yeah, Hassim, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective. I would love for you to give the viewers an idea of where to follow your story, and you know, what can we expect from Winter Circles for the remainder of 2020?
You can follow us at Winter Circle on IG. Our next drop, we'll be dropping peanut butter and jelly again at Cookies Oakland, Burners on Haight, Dr. Green Thumb Sacramento, and a couple other delivery services, Green Line Delivery Oakland. After the peanut butter and jelly drop, we'll either be coming with the peanut butter and guava jelly or the 1942. There's been a great response from both of the strains. So for the rest of 2020, expect those two strains coming from Winter Circle, peanut butter and guava jelly, 1942. And we're also going to start doing a peanut butter and jelly CBD pre-roll.
Okay, that's amazing, my brother. I look forward to it. I look forward to following your story and working with you outside of this. I definitely appreciate you coming on.